Aw yeah, back in the saddle again finally, which isn't gonna make a whole lot of sense to people who are coming to this video later. But it has been quite a few months since the last time I played Minecraft or made any videos whatsoever. And while I could get into reasons for that, that's not why y'all are here, because what you want is yet another episode of Statech Industry. So yeah, I have been gone for roughly about 4 months, and I have been doing some work on my base, but I honestly haven't been doing a whole lot that would push the narrative of the pack itself forward, because I don't really want to do progress off screen if I can avoid it. That said, if we look at the quest log, you can see that, well, there have been some minor casualties, and I suppose we should start talking about at least some of them. And I'm actually going to start with this one over in the magic chapter because it's relatively mundane, but it actually opens up the rest of Spectrum and the rest of the magic chapter for us, because I spent some time looking around in swamps for, well, the secret project that's coming up later in this episode that I'm sure that I spoiled in the thumbnail, but I found these. And these are the Quixotic Reeds. So I can actually start moving forward with the magic chapter again at some point, which I am not doing today because I don't need any new surprises first thing back at the wheel here. So instead, let's go back into the electric age chapter and start going through these one at a time. The first one's the electric macerator, which given where we left off is actually really easy to produce because it's just the basic machine hull at this point. I could have done this a while ago, but I hadn't felt the need because I had these large steam macerators behind me. But as luck would have it, when I started making these large steam quarries back here, well, the throughput on these just did not work out. And I started having a bunch of materials that weren't getting processed out of the new ones, specifically the ones from the nether. So I started making this bank right here, which I clearly haven't finished since there's a hole in here, because I'm honestly not entirely sure what I want to do here, but I have a bank of LV steam turbines just progressively providing power to kick off these electric macerators down here, which if we look at the wiring in the back here, you can see only take a single item each, which should in theory help with specializing the machines. And this is where the overclocking comes in if they're constantly running, but these won't be constantly running because that's not how fast the materials are coming in. So I'm honestly not sure which way I want to continue with those or with just more of these large macerators. I haven't quite made up mine, which is why I haven't torn it down or replaced it all yet, and why I haven't finished this bank out, because this is also kind of a power problem. Which brings us to the next entry here, the advanced large steam boiler, which I finished, and in the process kind of ruined my power generation room, or at least the look and feel of it, because I added a large tank to store steam in. I have a double bank here with the advanced large steam boiler and the normal large steam boiler. Thankfully these can wall share, even though they're technically different because the center blocks are all the same. And I don't actually have this one turned on. If we look at the input, it's completely empty right now, whereas the large steam boiler is set up to take coke dust. And that's because I'm not currently using all the power up out of it, and I'm kind of leery to turn the other one into a large one and turn it on just because I am worried about the amount of coke that I am producing. This room is also kind of janky. I kind of want to rearrange it. I think long term I want to put the boilers against this wall, but the corner ceiling here is a little bit of a problem, and move the water out of here entirely and do what I'm kind of doing here, where I have a tank of just water somewhere else, and move this out as well, because this is now being dumped out into an entangled tank, which if we walk around the corner here, I decided to remove the hole here and just pipe everything out through entangled tanks to power this bank. But this is not the only spot, because you can see that I now have it up here as well as back here by the quarries, which have their own dedicated bank of steam turbines as well feeding it. So all of my power stuff is now pretty much centralized, which leads into the next one, the pyrolace oven, which I only made because I only had to make this piece right here, which only really required this new one piece up right here that is only used in this for the most part, and B, because one of my kids was harassing me and wanted to help, so I let him put it together. That said, we didn't actually build the machine anywhere. I don't have the actual other parts, and I was thinking about providing creosote as one of the outputs from it, which you can make from coal, and I can speed it up to make it faster here and a little bit more efficient, but then I would need to centralize the creosote as well and pass that around, and it's easier just to pass one fuel around to these turbines. So I'm just calling that good for now until I decide I need something like this wood tar instead, which we will actually need in the not too far future when I finally get around to making the distillation towers, because this provides benzene. And if you are familiar with Greg Tech at all, I'm sure you know where this is ultimately heading. So having gone through this relatively short list, I guess let's mash the button to get a reward and see if the course of this episode is going to change all of a sudden. Another recycler, because of course there is. Just right after I got this area reorganized and set up a bit, if I make it a 3x3, it'll probably look more consistent with the quarries at least, but then I've got to add more machines. And obviously, as with everything, I have been slowly expanding the base out. I pushed this back wall a bit, and clearly if you look down here behind me, you can see that I haven't finished building this area out yet because, well, I have thousands of soul sand now, those stairs are a pain to make, and I haven't automated them. You'd think that's something I would get around to do, but I've also been consolidating and adding some more automations behind the scenes here. This area still mostly looks all the same except for the steam coming in from the outside, but if we come around the corner back here, you can see that this bank now goes even further down this wall, because I added a whole bunch of the sub-combines that I did was missing previously. See? Gold drills. So I guess we're at the part of the episode where everyone's just going, really hard? 4 months and that's all that you did? And yeah, that is kind of all I did. And oh, that right back there, I made a frog farm because I needed lights for the outside decorations of my base. You might have seen it in the intro. And I was torn between using sea lanterns in the original design and frog lights. Sea lanterns can ultimately be made from the pieces here from the Mob Crusher with a Guardian model. And while I don't have that set up, that is well within my means to do. And I probably should start making Mob Crushers, I don't know, in between these last couple months, huh? But I also came to realize that as well as having never really made a Guardian farm, I've never messed with the frogs from vanilla before, which means I've never made a Froglight Farm, which meant I needed to go out and go capture some frogs. And that's how I found the Quixotic Roots from Spectrum, because I was busy looking for different swamps. And let's be clear, while I did finally find a swamp, it's a good thing I just decided to actually make a nature's compass, which I can't remember if I've shown this before, but it's sort of like the structure compass, where if you know what you're looking for, you can just type it in here and it will point you to the closest one and tell you how far away. So say I want a cypress swampland from Oh the Biomes You Go. And you can see the coordinates are listed as well as the distance. But if we take a quick look at the map, you can see exactly how far I ended up having to go to find this, and this was not the first swamp that I found. Because if this is the swamp village we're in right here, if we come all the way down here, this is where my home base is. So it involved quite a bit of traveling, and this wasn't the only place that I had to go find, because we also needed a desert and a snow biome to breed the frogs in. Which, if we come to the desert, you can see that I built a junky little cabin to teleport into to avoid all of the creepers and the nastiness to store the tadpoles while they grew. But thankfully, with the golden lasso and buckets for the tadpoles, moving the various frogs around was not hard. And one thing I've learned is that I really do not ever want to build an actual Froglight farm in vanilla if I can avoid it, because oh my good lord, dealing with the magma cube spawners is not fun. So I just went to the nether and got one, and just moved it into my farm inside my base directly above my normal mob farm, and now I'm questioning why an enderman is in my frog farm. Bad enderman, no cookie. Anyhow, this is basically just, well, I don't know if this is actually Ilmango's design, but I got it from his channel. I don't know if I can credit the design of it to him, but it's just a magma cube spawner sitting above distant blocks of packed snow, which the magma cubes fall into and slowly die until they're the small cubes, and then the frogs eat them and everything gets sucked into that vacuum hopper and dumped down into my storage system. But now, as long as I idle near my Froglight farm, I have so many Froglights. Anyhow, the whole point of that was so that I could start decorating the outside of my base, kind of like you're seeing out here, where I can now properly light up the outside without all of the garish eyesore of torches everywhere. But this didn't solve all of my problems, unfortunately, because honestly, one of the things I had wanted to use them for was to stud the upper parts of these walls right here with some sort of lights, kind of like I've got them in the fences, although I feel like they get in the line of sight, so this isn't entirely ideal. If we turn the light overlay on, you can see that there are some gaps missing where it's not properly covered by these lamps, so I need to do something about that. If only the things I had tried hadn't turned out all ugly, I might actually have something worth showing, but I didn't succeed at that. In addition to all of this, I also started building out the third floor up here and added space to part putting in the false walls and whatever machines I want to do up here. I haven't entirely cleaned out the geode yet or pushed back to match the area below, because I haven't even started using this area yet, and I honestly only have a placeholder travel anchor up here just so I can get up here at all. Clearing out all of that stone back there is hours and hours and hours of work, because while I do have access to the destruction gadget, I don't really have the power to actually get it to work very well right now. So the best I can really do is the building wands to carve out large chunks of it at a time, but this takes time and effort to pull out even like this much. It's not ideal. Now, to be clear, I do also have a hammer, which is also great, but it doesn't work for things like gravel or dirt. And as far as I'm aware, there isn't an analog for the, whatever the big, huge shovel was from Tigger's Construct. I don't remember the name. So it's taking me a bit of time to get more of this area cleared out, especially the further back I go and the higher up I go. I really need more power. Anyhow, this was just mostly to get you guys back up to speed as to where I've been at since it's been a couple months, show you the Froglight Farm, and then maybe discuss where we're going to go, because ultimately we need to get over here to be able to make stainless steel. But I think next time I'm going to take a detour down over in this direction and get started on the fluid production, because this will help us make stainless steel in the long term. Anyhow, it's good to see you all again. Sorry it took such a long break, and I hope to see you again. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.